So what we're going to do is we're going to set up the console connection so we can watch this thing get powered up. First thing, we're going to use PuTTY here and set it up for serial. Now, the serial setting for PuTTY, when you're actually connecting via serial, is 96 N81, and then the flow control is none. You need to make sure you have it to no flow control instead of X on, X off, or RTS, CTS, which is hardware flow control. Because the Cisco devices don't support any kind of flow control through the console ports. So from here, I'm just going to load the serial settings, and we'll go ahead and plug it in. There's that. And we should start getting... So now we're seeing the boot up process. We're seeing a C2950 bootloader. We're seeing the version of the bootloader itself, not necessarily the iOS. Various different things it attempts to start, and then loading the flash file. Here's the iOS file that it's attempting to actually load in this particular case. Now notice the version number here is 12.1.22 EA1 for this box, and the bootloader, this is a EEPROM on the switch itself, is 12.1.11 REA1. So that's the boot prom there, which is very different than the actual iOS itself. We got a nice lengthy statement regarding exportation of this information because it has cryptographic features, which is equivalent to treason here in the United States. So definitely not something you want to do. If you have any questions about that, please call your lawyers. In that case, it got to the point where it was going to load the startup config file, but because we erased it, it brought us to the system config dialog here. So we're actually sitting at the dialog. It gave us this, and then it started sending a bunch of trap messages to us. So I can hit Control R. There we go. We'll just hit Enter, and it'll come back and start, asking us if we want to go through the initial configuration dialog. So the configuration dialog here is going to walk us through the process of setting up the basics on a switch. It also will attempt to do this thing here, which is attempt to actually load a configuration file by broadcasting and looking for it. This particular process is called autoconfig. I haven't used it in years, but it's still something that's turned on by default on most Cisco platforms. But we're going to use the setup script in this case. So we're going to type yes. And this is going to ask us a bunch of questions here. We can abort out by hitting Control-C at any time. And if there's any defaults in the brackets, if we just hit Enter, it'll accept it. So do you want basic management? Sure. What is the host name of the switch? We'll call it ICND1-SW. All right. It now would like to know what the enable password is going to be. Now, in this case, the enable secret password is what it's asking for. Now, this particular password is hashed on the device. You use the MD5 hashing algorithm, which I've talked about before, to store this password. So we're going to put in Cisco, which you should never really use. And then it wants the enable password. The enable password isn't really used by older software, like they're saying here, in some boot images, but I haven't ran into a situation in a very, very long time where we actually need the enable password. But the setup script still requires that you put it in. So you can't make it Cisco because it's going to come back an error. And I'll try that and hit Enter, and I'll get an error that says, please choose one that's different. Now, there's a little mistake in this script. If you type Cisco again, it'll allow you to make the enable password the same as your secret password. But the reason why you don't want to do that is, why would I have a hashed password in my configuration and then store it in clear text in that same configuration? Kind of a nonsensical thing to do. So we're going to go ahead and do it one more time, and we'll make it San-Jose. All right. Another thing it wants to know is the virtual terminal password. So when we're connecting over the network via Telnet or possibly SSH, although SSH truly requires a username password, it's going to ask for this password. So really, it's a Telnet password is what we're configuring here. And I'll make it remote.